Most of us who own a cell phone start our day the same way. We start by touching our phones to turn off our alarm. And the second we touch it and look at it, we are treated to the barrage of notifications that have come in for us over the night. We bring that with us into the next task that we do, interrupted by notifications or by thoughts of things we've seen. And we get through the day like that, constantly having to fend off bids for our attention if we want to get anything done. And we go to bed frequently, scrolling before bed or dealing with the very last notifications of the day. We set our alarm, and then it all starts up again tomorrow. So this isn't just one day. This is our lives. We look back, and we can't even tell quite how we got here. In 2023, the U.S. Surgeon General released a report called Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. So they reported that in the U.S., adults spend an average of 6 hours a day on digital media, that 1 in 3 adults report they're online almost constantly. 80% of U.S. adults use social media, but 95% of U.S. teenagers ages 13 to 17 use social media, and half of those say that it would be really hard for them to give it up. So given these numbers, it's important that we start thinking about the actual design of this technology that we're using all day, every day. The writer Zadie Smith reminds us that software is not neutral. Quoting here, different software embeds different philosophies, and these philosophies, as they become ubiquitous, become invisible. They're so widespread, we're using them all the time, and we don't always think about what it is that we're doing. Founding tech guru Jaron Lanier has written that the most important thing to ask about any technology is how it changes people. So let's take a look at some of the design characteristics of these technologies and explore how they work to erode and degrade our attention. So think about social media. All right, these are the platforms and the messages that are encoded within them. So on Twitter, what is the message being encoded there, right? You speak first, you speak quickly, you react, you speak again. If you don't speak, you don't exist. Is that a message worth agreeing with? Nicholas Carr has written that every medium creates a new environment, and then we adapt to that environment. And this shapes our perceptions and our thoughts, our relationship with others, and even our sense of self. We start to see the world as if we are these technologies, if we see the world through the goggles of the medium. Jenny Odell, wonderful writer, observes that patterns of attention, so what we notice and what we do not, are how we render reality to ourselves. And don't forget that these features on these platforms that we take for granted, they are just design. It's just software design. So let's take a look at a few key features that help shape the way that we see ourselves. In Naomi Klein's brilliant book, Doppelganger, she argues that all of us who maintain a persona or avatar online create our own doppelgangers, so virtual versions of ourselves that represent us to others. And she says that this encourages us to think of ourselves as personal brands, forging a partitioned identity that is both us and not us. One scholar has observed that profiles operate as a storefront for the self, requiring us to always balance between selective and authentic self-presentation. But this reduces us to data, to bits and bobs, to choices that we click when we make those profiles, essentially to multiple choice identities. This is really nice for the businesses running the platforms because it's easier to market to multiple choice identities. Zadie Smith puts it this way: to ourselves, we are special people documented in wonderful photos. And it also happens that we sometimes buy things. But this latter fact is incidental to us. The advertising money sees us the other way around. To advertisers, we are our capacity to buy, attached to a few personal, irrelevant photos. So we shrink ourselves down to fit the medium, and then we are rewarded for that reduction with likes. So let's think about the like button. Remember, this too is a software engineering choice. The like button wasn't originally a part of Facebook. It was added on in around 2009. And this feature really taps into our need for social attention. It provides validation. It's a metric we can assess. We can use it to gauge our importantness and our lovedness. But of course, it's never quite enough because it's not real, and it leads to other problems. Scholars have observed that these streams give us a unique opportunity for evaluating others' behavior, with built-in opportunities to express those evaluations directly via likes and comments. Studies have detected a significant increase in negative affect when individuals engage in passive interactions on social media sites like idle scrolling. The key challenge here is, of course, envy, right? But particularly of experiences rather than material purchases. And because we see and envy and notice what we envy in others, this means that we change what we post to fit the medium because we want likes to tell us that we're important. This encourages us, again, to think of ourselves as brands, but brands need to reliably deliver to their audience what their audience expects. But suddenly our audience is everyone, everywhere, all of the time. The philosopher Walter Benjamin wrote a really foundational essay in 1935 called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. In it, he talks about the cult of the movie star, which preserves not the unique aura of the person, but the spell of the personality, the phony spell of a commodity. And I think we can see this not just in today's professional social media posters, but in ourselves, in what we post and how we edit ourselves day to day. Gia Tolentino has written that on the internet, a highly functional person is one who can promise everything to an indefinitely increasing audience at all times. So in essence, our personhood is now determined by quirks of the software. I want to talk about the feed. You know the feed. Thing after thing after thing after thing. Contextless non sequiturs just flinging themselves at your eyeballs over and over and over again. So the first thing you see is the engagement announcement for a friend. Congratulations. And then the next thing you see is like makeup or beauty tips, and you think, I could probably be doing more in that arena. Then you see a video of an axolotl, and he's waving at you. There he is, waving. And then you see the most upsetting thing you've ever seen in your entire life. And then someone jumps on and is trying to tell you how to make $1 million. It is far, 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 far more easier to grab attention instead of holding it. You can make a loud noise and immediately you have people's involuntary attention. If I say, okay, now I need you to keep that attention for the next 25 minutes, it's gonna be far more challenging. So the way this software has been designed is not to hold your attention, but to grab it via involuntary attention over and over and over and over and over again. Algorithms aren't bad in themselves. An algorithm is just a set of instructions for completing a task, all right? When algorithms become more complicated and we start to make jokes about them, like, oh, the algorithm knows this about me and I don't know it about myself, it's because everything you are seeing is being filtered through assumptions, not even assumptions, known information about your preferences, actions, and habits, whether or not you are conscious of them. Okay, so everything you do and where you do it and the order in which you do it and at what time of day you do it gives these algorithms information about you that they can use to then guide exactly what you see. So these things that are flinging themselves at you constantly always have some sort of connection to you and who you are. So it becomes a much more attractive attention grab. So What happens when you combine the reduction of the self to fit a profile in search of social attention and with the infinite scroll, which is constantly grabbing our involuntary attention? To me, this leads to loneliness. And not just because more and more Americans are living alone. Self-imposed solitude, Derek Thompson has written, might be one of the most important social facts of the 21st century in America. And it really sets us up to be more disconnected. What we end up doing is watching alone and then sharing the thing instead of having shared collective experiences. Chris Hayes has observed that this is really a great development from a business perspective because it creates two opportunities for attention to be captured and monetized. We feel this urge to share because we're human, but also in the moment that we see something that captures our attention, we're alone. We've never been able to share so much of ourselves, and study after study after study has shown that we've never felt more alone. This is what ultimately led the U.S. Surgeon General to come out with that advisory in 2023, our epidemic of loneliness and isolation. Chris Hayes has identified that alienation as arising from the tension between our attention as a resource to be mined and exploited and attention as the substance of our lived experience. But I also think there's something really alienating about the whole experience of sharing on social media at all. We construct these identities, so we're the creators of the content. We amplify other people's content, so we are repeaters. And then we're also the audience members in this strange hamster wheel of shouting about the shouting and then consuming the shouting about the shouting and shouting about that. And it's all tailored to us. So it feels crafted and created. And we're living in this bizarro world where we invent versions of ourselves to attract social attention, but we're isolated from one another, which doesn't fulfill that social attention. And so we create these versions of ourselves that exist solely to be marketed to. And it's so not satisfying, and it's not okay.
In our next episode, we'll talk about how these software design choices impact our moment-to-moment experiences of attention. I'd love to hear about your experiences. Have you noticed how these designs impact your life?